today's session, we will be drawing roses. We will be using the STAEDTLER watercolor pencils. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or use the chat box during the live session.
In this session, Riaan will be using the STAEDTLER watercolor pencils on watercolor paper. It might seem like a very daunting project, but roses can be a lot of fun to paint. Try not to focus too much on getting it perfect. Riaan has prepared his drawing in advance. If you want to learn to draw, please go back to the previous sessions where we explain the principles of drawing. We will start with one petal at a time. Use a red to lightly shade the first petal and gradually shade the shadows darker. Watercolor pencils tend to look too light when you draw, but go darker very quickly when you add water to it. Rather start too light and add when you feel you need to make it darker. Dip the brush in clean water and dab it with tissue paper if you think the brush is too wet. Then start painting from the lightest area towards the darker areas. You can lighten a bit of the pigment while it is still wet. Clean the brush and dry it out, then paint over the areas you want to remove pigment from. The brush should soak up the paint and make these areas a bit lighter. It is important not to draw in the areas that are still wet. It will create a very dark mark which cannot be diluted with water to lighten. If you feel that you might make a mess where you have painted, rather let it dry first or work on another area. Now that we have covered the basics of the technique, we will continue to repeat the process for the other petals. To make the glass pop out from the background, we will need to make it darker behind and create bright highlight on it. You will see that Riaan is not covering all of the paper. Leave some open spots so that when you start to add water, these areas will be the lightest part of the petals. Dip the brush again and remember to dab it on a tissue if the tip is too wet. You can dry out the brush to remove light pigments on the paper while it is still wet. Riaan has now done the first pass and might return with a second and third pass to darken the shaded areas. Make sure that everything is dry before you start with a new color, otherwise it will ruin the other colors. It is wise to start on the one side of your paper and work towards the other side. Left-handed people will work from right to left and the other way round for right-handed people. You will always want to keep the wet paint away from under your hand. We will use yellow for the lighter parts of the leaves. Be careful when you start adding black to your drawing because it will reduce the vibrancy of the other colors. Start painting from the lightest areas towards the darker ones. At this stage, everything will start to look a little flat, and it is at this point we will add our second pass to the painting by adding more pigment to the shadow areas. In color theory, we explained complementary colors. Please watch the video on color theory if this is new to you. To shade the red petals, Riaan will use the complementary color of red, which is green, on the darker areas. Glass has certain properties which we need to pay attention to. The most obvious is that glass is transparent and we need to paint or draw whatever is behind it. Glass is also very smooth and will reflect a lot of light that bounces off its surface. Depending on the thickness of the glass, it will refract or bend the light a little bit or a lot. The distortions we see in glass are due to its refractive nature. Riaan will leave a lot of wide open spaces to suggest the bright highlight on the glass. Draw whatever you see behind the glass. In this case, there are roses behind, so this is why we use red. Use the green where you see it through the glass and remember to add yellow for the lightest areas on the green. Our technique still stays the same as with the petals. Start with light shading and make it increasingly darker. Clear glass does not have colors in it like blue, but because of the reflectivity of the surface, it will introduce colors seen in the vicinity of it. We will use blue on the glass not because glass is blue, but because it reflects blue from the scene. If we understand why we see blue in the glass and water, we will also start to create more realistic looking art. Using black very cautiously, we will start to add the dark spots within the glass. If necessary, we can give our painting a third and fourth pass to darken the shadows even more. Use yellow to add more vibrancy to the red petals. Add shadows at the bottom of the flowers and leaves to make it clear that they're placed on the surface and not floating in the air. We are going to leave the table white and not add any detail to it. We want the focus to be on the flowers. Keeping the table void of detail will guide the viewer's focus more to the flowers. You can always add more detail to the painting, but we are calling this one done. If you're struggling with anything or need more information, please feel free to contact Riaan via email. We hope you enjoyed this session with us. See you in the next one.